Today we will have the first part of the topic, the attack on Israel. We are living very tense moments due to war. Not just skirmishes, but war. War not only in Ukraine, now in Israel, in that area that is so strategic worldwide. But we are going to go deeper in this first part about how the events have gone, but everything that is moving around and why. But the authentic reason will be dealt in the second part, which we will have tomorrow, God willing. But before that, I would like you to see once again the image on the front page. Look at it well. It was a place where they were doing a rave, one of these concerts for peace, where young people were dancing and drinking and jumping and all of that. And while they were doing this, these images were filmed, and without knowing anything, some people from the Hamas group started to come who were going to attack them from the air. They had these light airplanes, which were not even airplanes. They were mounted on them and began to shoot, to destroy everything. Yes, it was terrible. It was terrible, a great massacre, people fleeing and everything you can imagine. But this that has happened seems like a metaphor of what is going to happen in these last days. The time of your visitation has been drawn near, and you haven't even realized. Have you heard a message, or haven't you heard a message? Do you know the end is approaching and the coming of Christ, or are you not aware of anything? And you keep planning your life, yes, having a good time, yes, with great slogans, everything you want. But these people who went with ultralights finished everything in a moment. And the war began. The war started. But people are in the decisive moments for the message to reach them. And wake up and stop dancing and being foolish and prepare for the return of Christ. We are facing the last signs. The return of Christ in 2031 is becoming more and more nearby, and people are still for nonsense. Well, what is happening is marking the pattern of the final prophecy. Stay tuned and you will see why. Yes, we are not going to start this conference with that very day of the attack, but rather a little before. Look, this news appeared on the 4th of October, 2023. Colonists of Israel raid the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex for 5 consecutive days. The settlers attempted to perform Talmudic rituals in the middle of the Sukkot holiday, the festival of tabernacles, according to an official of the Waqf Islamic Department. Well, there were incidents, as you can imagine, and this became increasingly tense. And what do you know? On the 7th, Palestinian terrorists from Gaza infiltrate the Israeli city of Sderot. Palestinian terrorists from Gaza infiltrated this Saturday morning into Israeli territory and the city of Sderot. Interesting? Yes, because they knew that if they went on Saturday, they would have an easier time. But how can this be? Weren't they anticipating that this could happen? They were not warned by their intelligence services? We will see something more about it. But this was the key day. We got up and saw this news there. Oh gee, my goodness. Yes, really shocking, because the images that the televisions have shown and the videos that circulate on the internet are really horrible, horrifying. Look at this. This very October the 7th, this news already appeared. Hamas calls on a heroic campaign to defend the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Let's see where this goes. The leader of the armed wing of Hamas, Mohammed Deif, assures that the attack is only the first stage of their renewed efforts against Israel. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, the center of it all. It needs to be defended. Well, look how they defend it. The leader of the military arm of Hamas and one of the main people responsible for the attack against Israel, which has taken place Saturday, Mohammed Deif, assures that this movement occurs in response to the policies of repression that the government of Israel has carried out for some time to this part against Muslims who go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque located in occupied Jerusalem. We warn the enemy not to continue its aggression against the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The era of aggression of the enemy without response has ended. I make an appeal to the Palestinians throughout the West Bank and within the Green Line to launch an attack without restrictions, he said in a statement. Last week, the Israeli army carried out a tactical attack against Palestinian Muslims in the enclosure of the mentioned mosque, one of the most important in the area, to give way to a group of ultra-nationalist Jews who wanted to enter the place under police cover. Jews believe that the mosque complex contains the first Jewish temples. Israel claims sovereignty of the territory, but there are many countries who do not recognize their rights to it. Prayer for non-Muslims in the mosque is forbidden. The administration of the complex is the responsibility of Waqf Giordano, the Muslims, while Israel administers the exteriors. The problems in the compound began as Israel wanted to expand its zone of control, controlling who enters and who leaves the premises. In this way, they have given way to Jews and have denied Palestinians entry on several occasions. Since Benjamin Netanyahu's ultra government came to power in 2022, several senior officials from the toughest branch in the government have entered the place, which has been considered by the Palestinians as a provocation. Israel has come to allow the entry of large groups of up to 50 along with uniformed soldiers, something that a few years ago was not allowed. And of course, this was putting pressure in the atmosphere, and tensions were not going to decrease precisely, but quite the opposite, and we are already involved in the middle of the war. Israel declares a state of war after a massive multiple attack. 5,000 rockets were launched from Gaza, and also pay attention to what it tells us here. The Operation Flood of Al-Aqsa, announced by Hamas at around 7 this morning, which has cost at the moment the lives of 22 people and more than 500 injured in Israel, has been immediately responded by the Hebrew army with a huge aerial deployment. The Operation Iron Swords, in which dozens of Israel fighter planes have reached numerous targets of the Islamic movement in the enclave. Several Palestinians have died in this operation, in which their exact number is unknown. That's how it all started. Well, started, it's the counter-offensive in this case on behalf of Israel, because the first offensive was from the others, and that front page image said it all. Well, they give us this detail too, remember this. This order was given after that armed militants from Gaza infiltrated this Saturday morning to that city, Sderot, very close to the strip where they were confronting Israeli troops. Yes, they chose to do it precisely on Saturday, the day the Jews are going to be still. Well, they had to move no matter what. And here it gives us some interesting details as well that are worth remembering. The chief of the army staff was evaluating the situation and testing plans for the continuation of army activity, while the Minister of Defense, Yoav Galan, approved the recruitment of reserve soldiers due to the emergency. That is, mobilization of reserve soldiers. In recent months, the issue of reservists has caused controversy in Israel, due to the threat of many of them to refuse military service in protest for the judicial reform of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which generated criticism among sectors that see it as a risk to the country's security. Yes, they were against these laws of Benjamin Netanyahu's government. The reservists began to mobilize. Well, now, yes, there is no other option. Look at that. It has coincided. It must be that. The multiple attack launched from Gaza took Israel by surprise. Yes, by surprise. In the middle of the morning of Shabbat, the Jewish day of rest. And according to the media, Now the Israeli troops are carrying out retaliatory bombings against the enclave, etc., etc. How interesting, hey? They had been in controversy for days and days with all this judicial reform. People, reservists, who were no longer up for the job nor wanted to, and look how now, yes or yes, they must go to the army. Mobilization. And, well, they still give us some more details. The Islamic group Islamic Jihad, also with a strong presence and an armed wing inside Gaza, reported that it has joined to the attack of Hamas. We are part of this battle, and our fighters fight along their brothers of Hamas, shoulder to shoulder until victory. According to Israeli media, the multiple attack carried out by Gaza caught the Israeli intelligence services off guard. My goodness, off guard, hey? By surprise. Let's see, let's remember something. The Israeli intelligence service is more than commented to be the second best intelligence service in the world. There is only one who surpasses him, and that is the Vatican. Yeah, I'm not making this up. These are data. Well, look where they are so good, and this attack takes them completely by surprise. Well, let's continue looking at something else. Here you have precisely what they tell us. The second paragraph is interesting above all, because the first part describes how these attacks occurred and so on, and the fear of the people. But then it says, with everything, Saleh al-Arouri, senior Hamas official, called the Palestinians of the West Bank to fight this fight, that he described as a large-scale operation intended to defend the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem and release Palestinian prisoners. Therefore, the excuse, they say, to attack is to defend the Mosque of Al-Aqsa, the one that has so many problems, not only from this previous week or those days before these attacks, but it has been a problem for so many years. Well, let's continue looking at something else. Because on the one hand, we saw the others who were talking that it would be victory, and now we see the counterpart. This new war culminates months of tension and violence, particularly in the West Bank, where tens of Palestinians have died in Israeli operations, and their populations have been objects of attacks by settlers, as well as Israeli residents have died in Palestinian attacks in towns near the settlements. Well, when we do the news in relation to the biblical prophecy, you will see there is a lot of news about Israel. That is precisely what they describe here. Citizens of Israel, we are at war. This is not an operation or an escalation, but a war, Netanyahu said in his first comment after the beginning of the operation announced this morning by the armed wing of the Islamist movement, the Ezzedin al-Wassam brigades. Therefore, it is already war. Our country is in war and we are going to win it. Check out, the others had said more or less the same about victory, right? But him, quite the opposite. The Prime Minister added that he has called an emergency meeting of his Security Council, has warned that our enemy will pay a price it has never known. A real threat, eh? A speech with echoes of the great conflict of 2014 between Hamas and Israel, when kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers on behalf of the Islamist movement led to a 7-week war in which more of 200 Palestinians died in Gaza, along with 73 Israelis and including 67 soldiers. Well, we are already seeing something that we all know. The situation of tension and of deaths due to conflicts between one another lasts a long, long time. And now it has reached a rank that could be like never before. How interesting, hey? Because remember that when God speaks in the Old Testament to the Hebrew nation, he already places a restriction on it, and that restriction, to many who can read it now as outrageous, God told them, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This in the Old Testament, because their revenge, their vengeance on their enemies when they did something to them was multiplied by much more of what they had suffered from them. Well, the Lord was holding them back like this. But later when Jesus comes and tells them directly that, no, not even that. If you are hit on one cheek, you turn the other, etc. Understand? Nothing to do with all this. They did not accept Christ. They did not accept Jesus as the Messiah. And here they return to eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. Now, they will pay a price they have never known, they say. Strong statements. They return to before what God said even in the Old Testament. Well, the president of Israel assures that Iran is behind the Hamas attacks. Here we are. Things are getting complicated. These are no longer attacks by terrorist groups in the area practically, Palestinians, but this now goes much further. And Biden appears saying, United States supports Israel and will never stop supporting it. Therefore, we can already expect that there may be, well, more tension. The American president promised that Washington will ensure that Israel receives the help that its citizens need so that they can continue to defend themselves. Notice they are doing this with Ukraine. Now they are also doing it with Israel, because he has done something. We will see. Netanyahu says we are embarking on a long and difficult war. Yes, he doesn't say this is going to be a jiffy, a 4-day operation and that's it, but a long and difficult war. Well, will it be so? Then we can get prepared then. Here this news appeared. Israel declares a state of war. Israel strikes back to destroy Hamas and free dozens of hostages. The war leaves more than 1,000 dead. And yes, now the numbers have been going up. Unfortunately, they have been going up. But on October the 8th, this appears too. London coordinates with allies to support Israel in the face of the depraved attack of Hamas. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak expressed unequivocal support of the United Kingdom to Israel and says it is working with international allies to coordinate supportive measures. It was to be expected. London, United Kingdom, Britain, who are allies of whom? Of Israel. You know, the city of London. Well, if you don't know anything about the London city, look for data and you will see how it arises and what economic empire is there and to who it is connected. Let's continue, because this was also expected. Cardinal Parolin expresses dismay for the war of Israel and Gaza. They are dismayed, hey? And look what he says. The Secretary of State of the Vatican, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, expressed his dismay at what is happening in the Middle East and asked the faithful to join in a choral prayer for peace. This always looks great, right? Our thinking at this moment is directed to what is happening in the Middle East, in Israel, in Palestine, and in the Gaza Strip, pointed out Cardinal Parolin. He indicated that these developments further endanger the fragile hopes for peace, which seemed to be dimmed even with the agreement with Saudi Arabia, in reference to the peace agreement that would be signed between this kingdom and Israel. Yes, this is another factor to take into account. Israel is doing peace and business negotiations with Islamic countries, of which until very recently, precisely, there was very little friendship. Very little. And, oh my, when they have this agreement with Saudi Arabia, wham, all this happens too. Beyond the diplomatic efforts that do not seem to have great results, and I also say this in reference to the war in Ukraine, we must all unite in a choral prayer for peace, he encouraged. Yes, look at where the world is getting to. Ukraine, Israel. Likewise, in an interview carried out on the sidelines of the conference, the Vatican Secretary of State indicated that it is not known how what is happening in the environment will evolve and end, because what is happening goes beyond all imagination. Yes, it sounds like prophecy, truly. What is happening goes beyond imagination. Netanyahu said that this was war and it will last a long time. Is this difficult to imagine? Well, if you know the biblical prophecies, if you have seen Gog and Magog, everything that we have presented in this regard, if you have seen Daniel 11 verses 40 to 45, no, it is not difficult to imagine at all. But the world does not know this. The world seems to have gone crazy. It seems that we trust only in force, in violence, in conflict, to solve problems that are there, real, and that must be solved with very different methods, he expressed. Yes, they are concerned, poor things. Yes? Have you seen everything we have presented about the prophecies that have to do with Jerusalem? And the prophetic role, as the Catholicism interprets it, about what is going to happen there and what it has to do with them? Because here it seems that they are very concerned, but they are very aware of what they are waiting and what they are moving to make it happen. But this, as always, most of people don't find out, and they aren't going to say it either. Anyway, let's continue. The Pope, of course, the one missing. Silence the weapons, terrorism and war do not lead to any solution, October the 8th. In the words of Francis after the Sunday Angelus, his pain for what is happening in Israel, his prayers for the families of the victims and for those who are living hours of terror and anguish, that there may be peace in Israel and Palestine, his appeal because every war is a defeat, directing his thoughts to all the countries in conflict. He recalled the much-hammered Ukraine that suffers so much every day. Yes, how nice are his words, right? Another thing is what they move from behind, but in the front, oh, how nice. Let's highlight something here, and it is this. The pilgrims who are on Holy Land these days experience all the apprehension of this escalation of violence. A parish priest from Veneto, Father Mirko Dalla Torre, is in the region together with 35 faithful from the community of Cernaglia della Battaglia, Treviso. Here is certain confusion. We heard the sirens and saw the gunfire and anti-aircraft fire. It hasn't been pleasant. Now we are at the hotel. We are all fine. It is his testimony from Jerusalem, collected by the website of L'Azione, the weekly of the Diocese of Vittorio Veneto. Even so, we were able to visit the Holy Sepulchre. We were at the Wailing Wall, and they sent us to a tunnel twice because Hamas was attacking Jerusalem. There was a possibility of missiles falling on the temple. We heard gunshots, and then the guide made us leave because it was too dangerous to stay. You cannot visit the temple esplanade. In the temple there was a large group of young people who chanted against Hamas. Are you realizing? During the conflict of that attack, there were groups of young people who chanted against Hamas, and where were they? In the temple, on the temple esplanade. And what did they do? Well, it could be that they were the same ones that a few days before had participated in what we've seen, like that first news that we have shown you, easily. Well, you see that's the situation of absolute tension, of absolute disgrace. What does the papacy show? Oh, poor things. But we have talked so much about what was going to happen in that area and what is going to happen yet, that anyone who knows the Bible prophecy and has seen everything we have presented with data, of course, you are not going to believe this pretense that, oh my poor things, because it is part of their plans. Hamas reveals details of his massive attack on Israel. It had the support of Iran. Well, here we are. The one that was missing from the scenario, Iran. And recently, it was being said by Israel that Iran can no longer be allowed to continue with everything it is doing with this nuclear program, which must be put to an end no matter what. Well, look at Iran supporting Hamas, and they tell it like that. Well, what can we expect? And will Israel remain arms folded? Hamas had the support of Iran to carry out his attack on Saturday against Israel, as confirmed by a spokesman from the Palestinian Islamist group to the British public broadcaster BBC. Ghazi Hamad, spokesperson of Hamas, has pointed out to the programme news show on the BBC World Service that it had direct backing from Tehran, who has committed to support Palestinian fighters until the liberation of Palestine and Jerusalem. Hamad has also maintained that they had received help from other countries he did not name, according to the BBC. Oh, Iran and other countries? They don't name them. Well, we're already here, because people like Zelensky already said that Russia was behind it. Okay. Wow. According to British media reports, the spokesperson has confirmed that the violence occurred in response to attacks by Jewish settlers in Palestinian territory. Every day they build settlements, take our lands, kill our people, enter our cities. Through the mediators, the Egyptians, the Qataris, or the UN, we tell them to stop, but they did not listen to anyone, he declared. Well, those things are happening. Some justify it, others don't. Others get angry, logically. Well, the situation was a perfect environment so that everything would explode, once again, for a change. But maybe now it will change quite a bit compared to other times. And here it is. The United States moved the aircraft carrier Gerald Ford and several fighter squadrons to the borders of Israel. The American Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has explained that the measure is taken in response to the attack of Hamas against Israel, but they have also sent battleships. Well, you see how it's moving everything again, eh? Like never before. An expert forecasted in August the outbreak of the war against Israel. Pay attention to this. It was news this October the 8th. In an article published in August, Yigal Carmen warned that the trigger for the conflict could be the rise of violent confrontations or the use of new weapons that cause a large number of victims on the Israeli side. An expert on counterterrorism predicted on August the 31st the escalation of violence between the Hamas movement and Israel. Collected from the Jerusalem Post, it is about Yigal Carmen, counterterrorism advisor to two Israeli prime ministers, Isaac Shamir and Isaac Rabin, and founder and president of the Eastern Media Research Institute of Middle East. Recently, there have been growing signs that a war against Israel may come in September or October. The trigger could be an escalation of violent confrontations that cause many victims, the use of new weapons that cause many deaths in the side of Israel. Carmen indicated in his article signs of a possible war in September or October. In addition, he pointed out that an increase in the efforts of Iran and Hezbollah to smuggle weapons into the West Bank took place, similar to the smuggling of weapons to Gaza. He added that there were reports about the possible use of those weapons by Hamas and Hezbollah that could cause a large number of deaths. These uses would include super-powerful explosive charges or rockets fired at Israeli towns. In this situation, it is likely that Israel has been forced to take large-scale response measures beyond its routine counter-terrorism measures at the cost of a total war, Carmen stressed. He also emphasized Tehran's alleged role in the conflict, that is, from Iran. According to the expert's comments to the Jerusalem Post, the attacks of Hamas are aimed at avoiding normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia regarding the diplomatic relations promoted by the United States. Wow, what a surprise! This counterterrorism specialist, and you see who he is linked to, it turns out that he already knew very well that this could happen between September and October, and the Israeli intelligence service was caught by surprise. They were not expecting anything. They didn't know anything. That is strange, eh? Let's see more things now. why Israel was taken by surprise by Hamas's massive attack and what to expect now. Hamas launched a massive attack against Israel this Saturday, okay? This happens, then comes the counter-offensive, and look at the comments now. Commenting on the magnitude of the attack, even Israel's top officials indicate that the country was unprepared. The ambassador of Israel in France, Raphael Moraf, declared on Saturday that the operation of Hamas caught Israel unprepared. The senior official commented to the Europe 1 station, "We were not sufficiently prepared for this. We could even say that we were barely prepared." Israel's Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermel, also described the aggression of Hamas like a horrible surprise attack. His words were supported by Martin Indyk, distinguished member of the US Middle East Diplomacy Council of Foreign Affairs, who stated that there was a total failure of the system. It was a complete surprise, he expressed. Well, look, like the 9/11 in the United States, right? That's something. In turn, the ex-head of Mossad, Fraim Yavevi, confirmed on Saturday that the Israeli intelligence did not receive a warning of any kind, and it was a total surprise that war broke out this morning. At the same time, he acknowledged that Israel was unaware that the Palestinians had this amount of missiles and that they were so effective. According to his words, it is a unique attack. As an operation, it was a great success. Unfortunately, I think it was well coordinated, Fraim Javevi explained. Well, this is not all. Hamas begins the operation Al-Aqsa Flood against Israel, with the name of the mosque, of the Esplanade of the Temples. Meanwhile, US officials also claimed that they did not receive any warning through intelligence that Hamas was preparing to attack Israel. After the events, both Israeli and American officials will share reports in the coming days to see if things were left out or if intelligence information was collected and misread, or if we have a completely dark area that we didn't know about, an ACNN source reported. In this context, several experts reiterated that the attack occurred as a consequence of a failure of the country's intelligence services. Ambassador Moraf admitted that certainly one can speak of a failure of this organization. The lessons will have to be learned, he affirmed. On its behalf, Indyk pointed out that it remains to be seen Iran's role in the attacks against Israel. If this is coordinated, as I suspect, then I think we can see a situation where Hezbollah could well join, and then we will have a regional conflagration of dimensions that we have not seen, and that would be a true regional conflagration, he manifested. Have you listened to what I have just read? Hezbollah could well join. If he did this, or if he does this, regional conflagration. In other words, the great barbarity of war. Will he do this? No? Let's continue. Let's keep going. I have seen reports that yesterday Hezbollah, a militant group from Lebanon, backed by Iran, that has ties with Hamas, he was telling the UNIFIL, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, to remain in their bases. That is, they knew that this was going to happen, Ross confirmed in turn. Well. A large-scale conflict involving the Hebrew country will also have a significant negative impact on the financial markets and relays, which have already been quite affected this year due to massive protests against the government's judicial reform. The shekel has fallen almost 9% against the dollar, registering one of the worst results among the main currencies, according to Bloomberg, while investment in the technology sector of Israel has plummeted. Of course, it was to be expected. Financial issues, when there are conflicts, you can see how they work. Well, up to this point, we have to believe what they say from Israel and the United States, that nobody found out anything that they were going to attack, that their intelligence services have failed, that the definitive thing is that they were not aware at all, nothing at all, not by chance, not even the slightest suspicion. They have not received even slightest bit of anything, nothing at all, nothing. Really? Well, but if we have seen the previous news from a man who was already warning about it, well, anyhow, let's continue. Nikki Haley, you remember her, Nikki Haley? This is not just an attack on Israel. It is an attack on the United States. The Republican presidential candidate urges the Prime Minister of Israel to eliminate the members of Hamas. Yes, this lady was on the highest political area of the United States. You remember her, right? In an interview with Fox News host Brian Kilmeade, Haley considered that this aggression not only harms the Israeli population, but also the American population, since she assured that the combatants of Hamas shouted "Death to Israel, death to the United States," while they were going to carry out their surprise attack. This is not just an attack on Israel, it is an attack to the United States because they truly hate us, she pointed out. Now it is the time to come together and say that we must unite for our brothers and sisters in Israel, she said, reiterating that this action will allow the Americans to anticipate to an attack like the one the Israelis suffered. And pay attention to the phrase that comes now. The Iranians are saying right now that the easiest way to enter the United States is through this southern border, and we are seeing thousands of people entering every day, and we don't know when our next September the 11th will occur, she concluded. So they already expect that they will have another 9/11, something that can resemble what happened to them. Yes, it was the year 2001. It's been years, right? But a pattern has been set and will continue to be set. There, the world changed and drastically, and it was preparing for the final stretch, for the coming of Christ, and so many without knowing. But evidently, the prophecies from before the return of Christ must be fulfilled, and boy, are they being fulfilled, one after another. So, they didn't expect this. On the other hand, the United States expect another 9/11. And meanwhile, now it seems that Israel is having its own 9/11 with all this. Oil prices rises as the conflict between Hamas and Israel livens up the tensions in the Middle East. According to experts, it is expected that oil prices increase this Monday in the first operations of the stock markets. News of 9th of October. As always, when something happens in the Middle East, the oil prices go sky high. With all that implies for the rest of the world, of course. Not even electricity, neither food nor fuel. Israel announces a complete siege to Gaza. We are fighting against human animals and we act accordingly, said the Minister of Defense of Israel. So what do they do to them? They cut off all these supplies. Netanyahu already was saying, get out of Gaza because they are going to wipe it out. It will be left in ruins. Well, these are the measures being taken. The Polish president believes that the consequences of the Palestinian war in Israel mustn't be exaggerated. Well, this man underestimates, as far as we can see, the impressive or even cataclysmic consequences. Andrzej Duda considers that the escalation of violence in the region does not have to trigger a third world war. Well, when it says Andrzej Duda, it doesn't mean that he's doubting, because Duda is to doubt in Spanish. It is his surname, although by what he's saying he does doubt on the matter. Nevertheless, he recognized that this is a very dangerous situation, because for a long time the movement of Islamic resistance, Hamas, because of its Arabic acronym, had not launched such massive attack against the Hebrew country, highlighting that it suffered great losses. Likewise, the Polish president argued that the worsening of the Middle Eastern hostilities distracts the world and is possible that the international community may turn its back on Ukraine. Are we thinking, well, what is being said here? When we see the Gog and Magog matter, we see that the conflicts must come to Israel. When we said that something had to happen so that the Ukraine issue would not stagnate only there, well, look how things are coming together now. If the support needed is not received from the western side to Ukraine, things can continue to move forward, moving forward in a line towards Israel. From different angles, it could be, because you already see it. As the situation goes, it is not only a question of someone coming down from the north, but of someone that also moves through those areas and those same lands. In short, time will be giving the reason to everything that we have already clearly marked through prophecy. Because we are not inventing anything and everything is coming true. But above all, we add that unfortunately it will cause greater migratory pressure in Europe. We will probably have a wave of immigrants from the Middle East which will hit Europe, he predicted. Here we are. Notice that a few days ago there were such powerful talks on the issue of immigration in Europe that it was necessary to put in place some very specific clauses so that some could enter and certain others could not. That this should be cut off. And now look. Be careful what you wish for. Someone has interests in a destabilized Europe, hey? Someone is interested in Europe being hurt, depleted, and nearly sunk. Right, gentlemen of the Vatican? Let's continue. Netanyahu, Israel will change the Middle East with its military response to Hamas. What awaits Hamas will be difficult and terrible, declared the Prime Minister of Israel. News of this October the 9th. In a speech addressed to the authorities in the south of the country, the area most affected by the current conflict, Netanyahu said, "What awaits Hamas will be difficult and terrible. I wish you to remain firm because we are going to change the Middle East. I embrace you and the residents. We are all with you and we will defeat them with strength, a very great force." Well, changes in the Middle East, they are going to change it. Something was missing for that to happen, huh? According to the latest estimates, more than 800 Israelis have died since the beginning of the Hamas offensive, while 560 Palestinians have died, and another 2,200 more were injured. Meanwhile, the Minister of Defense of Israel, Yoav Gallant, announced this same day a complete siege of the Strip of Gaza. There will be no electricity or food or fuel. Everything is closed, Gallant declared. We are fighting against human animals and we act accordingly, he added. Yes, we've seen it before, and now you can see in what context. This seems to be going very serious. And also this news, October the 9th. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, the Hamburg airport closed for more than an hour due to a threat of an attack of a plane coming from Iran. And this is Europe, gentlemen, this is Germany. It is all complicating itself. How many times do we say terrorism in one place, war in another? How many times we've said this? And pay attention to this, Iran supports Palestine. This Sunday, the president of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, supported the legitimate defense of the Palestinian people and accused Israel of endangering regional security through its oppression of Palestine. The Zionist regime and its promoters are responsible for endangering regional security and must be accountable, assures the president, who pointed out the oppression and injustice that the Palestinian people experiences. Raisi considered that the balance of power has changed and assured that the Palestinian nation is the winner on this battlefield. Finally, the conservative politician called on Ummah, an Islamic community, to support the Palestinian nation in an honest manner. Well, you see how the situation is, getting more and more complicated everywhere. Just yesterday, I was talking to a person who is of Jewish origin, and has much relationship with Israel, even today. And he told me that he was speaking with some friends of his who are living in those territories that were being attacked. And he told me the methods they were using. This was told to him, the people of Israel. They said that the method that Hamas was using was that they knocked on the doors of the houses, pretending to be Israeli soldiers. That's when they opened the door, or they kill them, or you can imagine what they do, and they take them away. And the people were shaking of horror and terror. The truth is that when we have seen images of the first scenes of their attacks, all with a brutal cruelty, and that you already know are even taking hostages or have taken hostages, they have put them in the border areas of Gaza as human shields, so that there are no bombing attacks on those areas or direct military attacks by land. They are playing all their cards. You see what is happening. You see also that this does not seem like it's going to stop very soon, and that it's going to be just a local thing. They are talking about the entire region. The truth is that we have seen a news earlier that said that someone else could get involved in this, Hezbollah. Well, look at this video that we just collected just before we started this conference. We have incorporated it at the last minute. Hezbollah threatens the United States. If they intervene directly in the war with Israel, there will be no red lines. Be attentive. You heard it, right? The Hezbollah group threatens the United States. If they intervene directly in this conflict, they will go after them. In all places of Middle East. Whether they are embassies, consulates, or military sites, they are going to go after them. The conflict is served. And look where they have sent battleships, aircraft carriers. Will some of this happen? Well, we have to keep watching. But once again, I must mention, if you have not seen what we have presented about this before it happened for so many years, please look at the topics of Daniel 11 from 40 to 45 and chapter 12 verse 1. Look at the themes of Gog and Magog, and look at the topics, or the topic of Turkey in the end time prophecy. With that, you will get an idea of what is going to happen, a very clear idea. But you should also look at who is interested in this happening, because someone is looking for something in a key place, Jerusalem. Sometimes we can think, look, these are the good ones, these are the bad ones, these are the ones who attack, these are the ones who defend themselves. And in this way, mentally, searching a scheme that we can grasp easily. But sometimes we don't realize that there are people who move puppets on both sides to cause certain conflict issues that will lead to a solution. And until we understand what the issue of Vatican and secret societies is about, we are not going to be aware of anything. Because it's true, there is an ancient enmity between each other. I don't exactly speak about Vatican and secret societies precisely, but of Israel and its neighbors, all those territories. But there is something more. There are people who have dedicated themselves to working on one side and the other to lead them to a confrontation, to achieve a goal that they have not achieved for 2,000 years. Nearly. Nor will they achieve it, or will they? Well, they are going to get it. And we are warned of what has to happen in that area. And you could say, now, why are you telling us this? You know, I had a topic to present before all this, but there has been no time. This is the first part, what we have shown today, of what is happening, yes. A reason why, yes. But we need to see something else. Why has this happened precisely now? Well, tomorrow, God willing, in this second part, we are going to show why. Because before we have read things referring to like animals, hey? Like animals. Well, I'm not talking about animals in a derogatory way to human, no, but about real animals. What will real animals have to do in all this conflict? Remember that this is about Al-Aqsa, of the mosque that is on the esplanade, of the temples or of the temple. What is being moved for this to precisely happen now? Well, tomorrow we are going to see it, and I think we are going to understand many more things. I'll just tell you to take a look at the title of this video that you have before you, and that you stay with the last of the words that appear. Rojas, red. Tomorrow we will see what it is about. Once again, yes, let's keep an eye on the developments that corroborate the well-interpreted biblical prophecies and what the Adventist pioneers said, because everything is being fulfilled perfectly. A shame that many haven't even found out, not even within Adventism, because things have changed so much, or they have made them change, and many of them are not aware. Those who should be telling this great truth to the world have rejected it. That is why they are rejected. And this ministry, this Christian church, the fourth angel ministry, will proclaim the message that they no longer want. Well, that is what we will continue doing, and with the help of God, many will see and believe. And I thank God, because there are already people who, seeing what is happening there now, have told me, "You said it years ago." Why? Because I was the smartest? No, because it is written, and prophecy never fails. The biblical prophecy, well interpreted, never fails. We will continue to see how this whole conflict is going, but tomorrow, God willing, we will talk about something related to that color red. God bless you. Maranatha 2031.